Did you forget I was there? You were on speakerphone that night. You called Danny on February 21st, 2001. I heard everything. I heard the plan, and in my opinion, you're just as sick as your mentor. February 21st, 2001 was the day Ashley Ellerin was murdered.
Diddy party stories, they're our favorite genre of anecdote, if you
really?
have one. Yeah.
Wow, okay, I've got a lot I can't tell.
There's celebrities who rise and fall, sometimes slinking off into obscurity. And then there's celebrities who instead reinvent themselves. Ashton Kutcher is the latter. He didn't just build a career out of a persona that he built multiple careers out of multiple identities. The Abercrombie model, the breakout star on that 70s show alongside Mila Kunis and Danny Masterson, the early 2000s face of iconic movies like Dude, Where's My Car and Just Married, and who could forget he was the prank king of MTV with MTV's Punk. But some people don't know, maybe you didn't, maybe you did. He was also a major Silicon Valley investor, backing Uber and Airbnb.
If this thing existed then, my dad, who worked his ass off in a factory every single day just to make ends meet, could have felt that pride of being able to take his family on vacation.
He was an activist who started Thorne, a nonprofit that uses technology to supposedly protect children online. And for a long time, every persona worked. But when people started to actually look into the different personas a little more closely, things didn't fully add up. First of all, his friendships start raising questions. He was friends with Hollywood elite like Harvey Weinstein. Then, of course, who could forget Les Moonves, who's all up in the web, and Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs. Also, the many Scientology friends who orbited around that 70s show, including now convicted beepist Danny Masterson. After people started looking at that, the cracks really started to show, and even broader conversations started creeping in, like the continued speculation around the death of Ashton's one-time girlfriend, actress Britney Murphy. Her official cause of death was ruled to be pneumonia, but her untimely and inexplicable passing still to this day fuels speculation and unanswered questions. And beyond his friendships, once you start looking at his career, the way that he made money, the way that he made a name for himself through a microscope, things start to kind of stink. This is a story about transcendence from celebrity, when the personas keep reinventing themselves for power, proximity, public relations. Ashton Kutcher's story is what happens when people stop taking the facade for face value and start asking questions, inspecting a little closer. Do not send any hate or honestly comments of any kind to anyone mentioned in this video on behalf of me or yourself. The purpose of this video is to give my commentary and opinion on matters of public concern. Thank you. Ashton Kutcher's rise works very well on camera because it does begin as a nearly perfect American legend. Ashton Kutcher is a homegrown hero as far as we're concerned, and everybody wanted to root for him. He was born, actually, Christopher Ashton Kutcher in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He was raised in a working class household outside of the traditional pipelines into Hollywood. As far as we're told, he had no industry connections, no legacy advantages, and no obvious shortcuts. Instead, what defines Ashton's early life and, of course, early career is hardship, particularly through his relationship with his twin brother, Michael. Michael had severe health complications growing up, including the need for actually a heart transplant. And this isn't just a small detail of Ashton's story. This is something that ended up kind of defining him decades later, even to this very day. In interviews, Ashton describes feeling guilty. He describes feeling protective over his twin brother. He describes how his perspective was shaped by his experience.
I'm like, how do I get to be this lucky? And for my brother to have be born with cerebral palsy, then have a heart transplant, then have this random blood clot, these things that are just how do I get to be this lucky? And there was a moment in all of this where I moved to New York and was starting to get some traction with my career. And Mike came out to visit and stay. And he looked at me and he said, "Every time you feel sorry for me, you make me less." And he said, "This is the only life I've ever known. So stop feeling sorry for the only thing I have." And that then create an entire shift back to where I think we are today, which is no, just straight up equals again. Like, that's it.
Why did you drift apart?
Jealousy, for sure. At least on my part.
Eventually, this narrative would become, like I said, foundational, not just to his own identity, but also how Ashton is perceived by all of us today. And it helped him to launch his eventual very many personas. But before Ashton was ever a Hollywood fixture, there was Iowa. He worked odd jobs, just like us. He attended college at the University of Iowa, and he briefly studied engineering. Christopher's life was completely normal and ordinary, until a chance encounter at a local bar that eventually turned Christopher's life upside down. The chance encounter marked the beginning of Christopher's transformation into the Ashton we think we know today. So that transformation, like I said, began in the late 1990s when young Christopher was approached at this local bar and asked if he was interested in modeling. After that, it was pretty much a whirlwind. He won his first local modeling competition, and after that, he entered full force into the commercial fashion world. He quickly became the face of Calvin Klein and Abercrombie Fitch. And these brands, especially at the time, but just kind of in general, these aren't just, oh, we're selling clothes. These brands were selling a lifestyle. Not just any lifestyle. If you're familiar with it at all, Calvin Klein and Abercrombie Fitch both had a very specific, hyper-sexualized version of American youth culture. Abercrombie Fitch, at its heyday, was part of a much larger corporate ecosystem controlled by this guy, Les Wexner, one of the most powerful figures in American retail, possibly ever. But not only that, Les Wexner has recently come under fire for his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But through his company L Brands, Les Wexner oversaw companies like Abercrombie Fitch, Victoria's Secret, and many other American mall staples that shaped how young people at the time, youth, sexuality, and aspirational identity were marketed at a large scale. The aesthetic, it kind of came across as easy and breezy and carefree, but it was entirely constructed, manufactured, and engineered. Not only was it entirely constructed, manufactured, and engineered, but it was constructed specifically to be provocative and salacious and sensual and use a certain type of look of models to get that look to come across and to get the aspirational lifestyle of it all to come across to us. Abercrombie's campaigns blurred the line between mainstream retail and something a little more curated and exclusive, slightly more editorial than typical mall fashion, but they were in malls. We all remember it. We were there. So Ashton Kutcher, the Abercrombie model, embodied the exact qualities on the nose that brand pushed. Athletic, playful, accessible, authentic. You might be able to see someone like that at your local football game. Traditionally attractive, broadly appealing, without being polarizing, nothing too weird, nothing too bleached brow, at the time. But most importantly, Ashton was willing to take his clothes off for these ads. There's picture proof of it. Because of these attributes, because of his willingness and all of that, he fits so well within the brand of Abercrombie. He wasn't really just modeling clothes, like I said. He was participating in an industry that was selling a lifestyle to us of manufactured desirability. Now, looking back on it in hindsight, of course, it's obvious and it's clear, and at the time we had no idea because we were mostly kids. Put on top of that, years and years later, Jeffrey Epstein, who had a long documented financial and personal relationship with Les Wexner, Jeffrey Epstein would become the center of the most scrutinized scandals involving elite networks of wealth and influence and other things unspeakable. Later investigations would confirm that Jeffrey Epstein had significant control over aspects of Les Wexner's financial affairs for years. This would include acting as Les Wexner's power of attorney, handling aspects of his life and finances, and their relationship, according to reports, extended well beyond a casual association. Now, I do want to be very clear, there was a recent deposition in which Les Wexner had to answer questions about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and he kind of downplayed their relationship.
And I know that you specifically mentioned the island, that you have been to Jeffrey's Island. Do you recall seeing any of those persons that Jeffrey Epstein would name drop while you were on his island?
No, nobody was there that
Abigail, myself, Jeffrey, maybe somebody cutting grass or something.
So according to Les Wexner, they weren't really that close, him and Jeffrey Epstein. But according to pretty much anything else and every other source and all the other reporting, and the fact that we do have a financial paper trail connecting them to each other, it seems like they weren't just business acquaintances. You can decide what you want to believe. I also want to be very clear too, there is absolutely no verified evidence I was able to find that places Ashton Kutcher in Epstein's activities. Maybe his name was mentioned in the files somewhere, but it wasn't like any direct link to Ashton Kutcher. And there's no credible reporting that directly links his modeling work to Epstein either. But his name does appear, like I said, a few times in the Epstein emails and the Epstein files. So, I just want to be very clear. I'm not saying Ashton Kutcher knew Epstein or anything like that. I'm just trying to say he was a model for Abercrombie and Fitch. That company was owned by Les Wexner, and Les Wexner has ties to Epstein. The broader context, though, does matter because Ashton's early career exists inside a corporate cultural ecosystem, especially that he was specifically a model. Years later, we're now re-examining this whole ecosystem through the lens of Epstein's connections to Wexner and various elite social networks. I'll put a little picture right here of my webbing where I had that first little Les Wexner. This is before the files even came out. So eventually, Ashton moves on from fashion modeling and becomes an actor. He landed a leading role on the cultural juggernaut That 70s Show, and he got the role in 1998. He had a starring role as a character named Michael Kelso. The show aired on primetime network cable, so this role really did mark Ashton's transition from obscure niche Abercrombie model on, maybe on a bag on somebody's book at school or whatever, book cover, to a household name, and he proved to be mainstream viable. Now, beyond just the fact that That 70s Show was very successful commercially, the series created a long-term professional and social network among its cast members. The cast members included a man by the name of Danny Masterson. Another cast member was Mila Kunis, who is to this day, right now, at this time sitting here recording this video, Ashton Kutcher's wife. His wife he's married to today, he met on this show as a cast member. So years later, his relationship to Danny Masterson and Mila, I guess, would haunt his carefully curated image. First, rumors started to circulate about Ashton cheating on his much older wife at the time, Demi Moore, with a much younger castmate, Mila Kunis. Then, Danny Masterson's deep involvement in Scientology began to surface. The Church of Scientology would cast a long shadow over the entire That 70s Show cast and production that lasts to this very day. And again, because I ain't trying to get sued by anybody, and because the truth is very important, I want to be very clear. Ashton himself never admitted to joining Scientology, but they do have these pictures from 2003 on Getty Images, girl. It's him right there and the rest of the cast of That 70s Show at the Scientology Celebrity Center Christmas party. So, do with that information what you will. This is not isolated to his religious beliefs. He's standing right there next to now convicted, Danny Masterson. Okay, this is the context I'm trying to show y'all. Even if Ashton wasn't a member of Scientology and never has been and never was, he is at least accepted to be performing at the Christmas party in 2003. Look at that picture. So again, first it was Harvey Weinstein, Les Wexner, and now, again, Danny Masterson. Ashton's proximity to these powerful institutions, known for abuse, Scientology, allegedly, control and subversion are quite evident. So on February 21st, 2001, okay, this whole section right here is Ashton Kutcher the Butcher, Ashton Butcher Kutcher, okay? This something going on right here, perhaps. On February 21st, 2001, when Ashton was really beginning to enjoy his That 70s Show fame, he had a date planned with a woman named Ashley Ellerin. They were going to go on a date to a Grammys after party together. As fate would unfortunately have it, that very same night, Ashley was murdered in a bloody incident at her apartment. Ashton would later testify in this murder, and he testified he arrived to her home, knocked on the door, he got no answer, and he left, unaware of what had happened inside. When police searched the scene, They found Ashton's fingerprints up and down all over that apartment. However, he was never formally accused of any wrongdoing. His testimony ultimately supported the prosecution's timeline, so he didn't get in any trouble for that. And who knows, maybe he did nothing. I mean, maybe it was just a tragic oopsie daisy, who knows?
Now that Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis are getting dragged for writing character letters on behalf of Danny Masterson, the internet has dug up a 22-year-old murder case of one of Ashton's old girlfriends. Why? Well, Chrissy Bixler, who is one of Danny Masterson's accusers and also dated him for several years, posted a cryptic statement on her Instagram. This statement says, "Dear Ashton, I know the secrets your, quote, role model keeps for you, ones that would end you." She puts role model in quotes because that is how Ashton referred to Danny in his character letter. She continues, "Did you forget I was there? You were on speakerphone that night you called Danny on February 21st, 2001. I heard everything. I heard the plan. In my opinion, you're just as sick as your mentor." February 21st, 2001 is the night Ashley Ellerin was murdered. She was murdered by Michael Gargiulo, who was recently sentenced to death. But the way the statement in Chrissy's post was worded, people were thinking she was implying that Ashton had something to do with the murder. But I actually don't think that is what she meant at all after finding this YouTube video. 18 years after the murder, Ashton testified on the stand that he went to Ashley's house that night, knocked on the door, there was no answer. He peeked through the window, saw on the ground what he thought was wine stains, and he left. However, Aaron Smith-Levin, who is a YouTuber and also appears to be friends with Chrissy Bixler, says that while Ashton has absolutely nothing to do with the murder, he claims that Ashton didn't just knock and leave that night. He claims that Ashton entered the property and actually saw Ashley's dead body.
And Ashton Kutcher was not he did not play a role in the death of Ashley Ellerin. But because Ashton chose, let me gather my thoughts here. What really happened is Ashton Kutcher showed up to the house to pick Ashley Ellerin up for her date. He opened the door. He walked into the house. You could not see the body on the floor from the entryway to the house. He walked into the house. He looked over to the area where he saw her body lying on the floor. She was like 47 times, covered in blood everywhere. Freaked out, left the house, and for about the next hour sat in his car outside the house, calling various members of his team for advice on what the hell to do.
Smith-Levin also claims that Ashton called Danny Masterson that night, which could be what Chrissy Bixler was referring to in her post. I must add that I have not reached out to Smith-Levin to verify his claims. Chrissy Bixler also made a very directed statement towards Mila Kunis in this post, which I can talk about in a separate video.
Years later, in 2009, this is about 8 years after that incident, Ashton's, at the time, ex-girlfriend, Britney Murphy, passed away in her home. Again, inexplicable, untimely, tragic death. This prompted a wave of online speculation. It began to form around the circumstances of Britney Murphy's passing. Now, the Los Angeles coroner did officially report and conclude that Britney Murphy's death was from pneumonia. Her cause of death was pneumonia. There were contributing factors, including anemia, and she was on multiple prescribed medications. But the case did remain a fixture in internet lore, internet discourse, and it was fueled by the unusual timing of Britney Murphy's husband's death. See, Britney Murphy's husband, Simon Moonjack, equally unsettling, equally untimely death, was just a few months later after Britney Murphy's death under similar conditions. So even Britney's own family asked ongoing questions about her death. Ashton had dated Britney in 2002 and 2003. He co-starred with her in the romantic comedy Just Married. And after she died, Ashton was occasionally mentioned in online discussions, not necessarily at first as a suspect, but as part of the wider web of Hollywood connections people revisited when re-examining the tragic case.
Investigators probing the Epstein files have turned their focus towards Hollywood celebrity Ashton Kutcher, as disturbing information surfaces about his ties to a massive blackmailer murder machine running through Hollywood. According to an Epstein survivor, Kutcher was involved in luring victims for the trafficking network. But it doesn't stop there. He has blood on his hands. A lot of blood. We're talking about a series of high-profile unalivings, including 2 of his girlfriends, one of whom was the actor Britney Murphy. As the investigation widens, Hollywood insiders are warning that Kutcher, once cast as Hollywood's golden boy, is likely the next cab off the rank to receive justice, and join his best friend Sean Combs and Danny Masterson in serving a long sentence behind bars.
Again, I want to be very clear. I am not saying Ashton Kutcher is a butcher. Okay, that is a theory that goes on.
Did Ashton Kutcher take the life of Britney Murphy? Short answer, yes. Long answer, also yes.
But that isn't what I am saying. That is not what I am even implying. There's no credible evidence linking Ashton to either death. Not Britney's, not Simon's, not Ashley's. There's no reporting from official sources that suggest any wrongdoing on his part. It was years after he dated Britney Murphy that she passed. She was remarried. But the persistence of these theories shows a larger pattern. Once public trust is lost in a celebrity, once the facade starts to crack, distant or even previously unremarkable connections can fuel wider online speculation. Details like this kind of linger. People don't really ever truly forget. But now, decades later, there have been many people on all corners of the internet calling him Ashton the Butcher Kutcher and rehashing all these deaths as possible evidence that he may be a serial killer. But for our purposes, I'm not saying that. I don't think that. Just interpret these stories as more odd occurrences in his orbit that may never really fully disappear. Let's rewind back to 2000, 9 years before Britney Murphy died. We obviously cannot make an Ashton Kutcher video without mentioning perhaps the most infamous role of all, and that is MTV Punk'd. With Punk'd on MTV, Ashton Kutcher evolved yet again. He began his own production company in 2000 called Catalyst, which teamed up with MTV to produce a reality prank show. Now, this part I did not know until I started researching for this video, but the original show that Ashton proposed to produce was originally called Harassment. Anyway, the show initially had a rocky start. It was supposed to be a show about Ashton pranking regular, everyday people. However, before the show even made it to air, they got sued for $10 million because of a prank gone wrong involving a fake bloody corpse in a couple's hotel room.
James and Lori Ann Ryan took a holiday from their home in Washington, D.C. to Las Vegas, booking their stay at the Hard Rock Hotel. The couple entered their Las Vegas room and discovered what appeared to be a dead human body covered and surrounded by blood, evidently the victim of a homicide. 2 actors posing as security guards blocked their exit, and another dressed as a paramedic went in before Ashton popped out and told them it was all part of a guerrilla-style candid camera show. The incident was being filmed as part of the pilot episode for Harassment. Unfortunately, the couple, who just wanted to enjoy their vacation, were absolutely mortified and later sued MTV for $10 million. The couple claimed invasion of privacy, infliction of emotional distress, and fraud, among other things. The crazy part is, this wasn't even the first time MTV made this mistake. 8 months earlier, a pair of teenage girls sued MTV after they were sprayed with human excrement for the show Dude, This Sucks. MTV apologized and promised to never show the footage, but the lawsuit remained in litigation. Somehow Ashton dodged a bullet with this controversy, but MTV still trusted his vision for a prank show.
And these were just ordinary people who did not sign up to be punked or pranked or harassed. And I can see why they probably changed the name from Harassment as well. I mean, you're kind of admitting it right there in the title. But anyway, so eventually Punk'd makes it to air in 2003. It was built on manipulation and humiliation of celebrities. They would set up celebrities, control the scenarios, capture their reactions on hidden camera, and then turn all these humiliating moments into entertainment. Anyway, basically the entire show is a humiliation ritual reality hidden camera show. At the time that Punk'd came out, shows like Jackass and all the other progeny of that were exploding in popularity. The audience, eventually, that's us. I didn't really watch Jackass. I didn't watch Jackass. Sometimes I would watch Viva La Bam, but we were still the target audience in our age range. And eventually we were the ones that would get blamed for the rise in this depraved style of entertainment. But in retrospect, it actually seems like Viacom, which owned Paramount properties, including MTV and VH1, was actually, again, constructing, glorifying, and pushing a certain culture, and then carefully curating and influencing our perceptions on what was normal, acceptable behavior. Anyway, so this Punk'd show would give Ashton an entirely new alter, separate from That 70s Show Michael Kelso persona, separate from his modeling days, and separate from Christopher Ashton. Then he would start to go on Saturday Night Live and appear on that show. At the time, those appearances would further reinforce his transition into kind of like a mainstream household name. Once he was on SNL, he was no longer just a pretty boy Abercrombie model. He was no longer just a little sitcom actor on this one show, or even a famous prank host who has his own show on, basically it was considered to be a degenerate network, MTV. No, he was on SNL. This further catapulted him into transitioning and transforming into a more versatile mainstream personality, a brand, if you will. Ashton by this point had become someone who could shift between formats. He could maintain control, all while keeping, the brand going and doing all of that at once. But like anything that is built upon, manufactured or constructed, perhaps not fully authentic foundations, the cracks began to show. By the late 2000s, Ashton's image was at its most refined. This is probably the most respected he ever was. Major campaigns like Nikon positioned him as broadly appealing and commercially reliable. His presence on Twitter made him one of the first celebrities to fully leverage social media influence at scale. So he was really an early adopter of Twitter, which is totally ubiquitous now. Everybody got a Twitter. Like literally entire nations have Twitters now. Wendy's got a Twitter. Taco Bell got a Twitter. Everybody's got a Twitter. But there was a time before Twitter where real celebrities were not approachable. They were not touchable. You had no way to get in touch with them unless you just basically stalked them or, paid the paparazzi and asked them. Ashton was one of the very first people, one of the very first celebrities who truly leaned into this Twitter interface. He wasn't just staying relevant, he was fully ahead of the curve. The same machine, meanwhile, that helped to build his image up would be used to start exposing his weak points. By 2011, those cheating allegations tied to his relationship with Demi Moore dominated the headlines. Reuters and major outlets covered the fallout, and Ashton's attempts to address the situation through social media, while they were cutting edge, they didn't really land the way that they might have once landed. Instead of looking transparent, he actually starts to look calculated.
His wedding ring is off, and so are the gloves when it comes to the media.
A lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth can leave someone's lips.
Amid rumors of cheating and divorce, Ashton Kutcher appears to lash out at the media in this new video diatribe posted on the website Chime In.
I just wanted to open up a little dialogue on the state of honesty, the state of truth.
Kutcher has been a top target for the tabloids in recent days, which continue to publish damaging stories about his alleged affair with his 22-year-old and speculate on the status of his marriage with Demi Moore.
There is no gatekeeper of the truth. We are our own editors, and we are our own publishers, and we are our own printers. And thereby people can sort of bastardize the truth in any way, shape, or form that they want. And spread that around the world.
It was like he was starting to be viewed as more industry and less rebellious bad boy from Iowa. And that subtle shift right there in time from relatable to something's kind of off here is very important. Between 2011 and 2012, another pattern starts to emerge. So Ashton tweets in defense of Joe Paterno. Remember him? Obviously, backlash followed.
At Penn State University, this was day one of the post-Paterno era. It followed a whirlwind of events Wednesday night that stemmed from child charges.
But Ashton was sorry. Oopsie, he apologized. But not without a little slap on the wrist from his buddy Les Moonves. Now, we just put out a whole entire video about this guy, but just to remind you, Les Moonves is the one who supposedly, allegedly, according to insiders, completely ruined Janet Jackson's album and then tried to blacklist her and stood in the way of her becoming a Hall of Famer. That same Les Moonves, because Janet Jackson wouldn't go and beg and cry, I'm so sorry, and grovel. But then Justin Timberlake did go to Les Moonves and grovel. So Justin Timberlake was allowed to go to the Grammys, and Justin Timberlake was allowed to have a career, but not Janet Jackson. Remember Les Moonves? Yeah, him. He also was involved in this scandal with Ashton Kutcher when he was getting canceled. He was the head of CBS at the time. Anyway, this little Joe Paterno backlash would ultimately also have little to no effect on Ashton Kutcher's career. Les Moonves still hired him to replace Charlie Sheen on 2.5 Men on CBS, which probably deserves its whole entire own video, that show. But anyway, Ashton just keeps, plugging right along. He's in this Pop Chips ad featuring him in brownface, portraying him as an offensive, stereotypical Indian caricature, which also that 70s show has been accused of also being kind of like a stereotypical racist against Indians as well. But anyway, that campaign, no, you can't do that no more. That's canceled. It was pulled almost immediately after public backlash. Now, I'll try to insert a clip. I don't want to offend nobody, but maybe I'll just, I don't know, maybe play it real fast or something. If you don't see it here, it's because we're not allowed to play it or something, but...
I'm Raj. I'm a Bollywood producer. I'm looking for the most delicious thing on the planet.
Yes, it's Ashton Kutcher in brown makeup pretending to be a Bollywood producer looking for love. This online ad had to be pulled after some deemed it racist, saying the character Ashton played of Raj was a stereotype and showed the Indian community in a bad light.
It's pretty racist. I mean, it is, but, he would probably say at the time that it was either him just doing a job or him, making it's just comedy and people should take a joke. You can make your own opinion on that. But he did, have a little scandal with the Pop Chips ad. Ashton Kutcher's pivot into tech and investments marks another personality shift. He had a company called A-Grade Investments and later Sound Ventures. He became an early investor in companies like Uber, Airbnb, and Spotify. Early investor in Uber and Spotify and Airbnb. These are huge, highly successful, industry-shattering companies. And what separates Ashton from most celebrity investors was this timing. He was so early, very, very extremely early. It made it seem like he really had a knack for knowing what was going to be the next big thing. That matters because Silicon Valley isn't really, I don't think it's appropriately characterized as an industry. It's more of a network. This network is built on proximity to other rich people, powerful people. It's built on trust and access to founders, capital, money, and information long before the public ever sees the final product. And Ashton, at some point in the early 2010s, stopped being an outsider, just kind of like hoping to invest in things. And he became someone who was allowed and invited inside the room. Coincidentally, this is also when his name started to appear in email correspondences in the Epstein files between Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. This is also where another pattern becomes too sharp to ignore, from Abercrombie and mass market cultural manufacturing, to network television backed by executives like Les Moonves, to now venture capital circles shaping the future of global platforms and human behavior. Ashton wasn't just modeling anything, not clothes, not systems of influence. He was helping to construct them. And that position, I believe, is what really runs as a constant and continues to define his entire career. He didn't stop there. There was yet another persona to emerge. Ashton co-founded a child safety nonprofit called Thorne, sometime between 2009 and 2012, depending on who you ask.
My day job is as the chairman and the co-founder of Thorne. We build software to fight human trafficking and sexual exploitation of children.
That's when another significant and immediate shift occurred. He was no longer just modeling and constructing or entertaining or just investing. He was now taking moral, ethical stances and positions in the political realm. See, his company Thorne operated at the intersection of technology, law enforcement, child safety, and policy. This nonprofit supposedly developed tools to combat child exploitation online using state-of-the-art facial recognition technology to identify victims. Now, if this video already wasn't going to be so long, I think I would spend 20 minutes just dissecting just that, what I just said. How did, like, for example, did Ashton Kutcher even have access to this state-of-the-art facial recognition technology? And if he did, why the government didn't have access to that same technology, so they had to go through Ashton. There's so much to unpack there, but for the purposes of this rise and fall personality construction video, I'm going to have to just move on.
Danny Masterson was somebody that, you know, Ashton stood by with, put out statements. Him and Mila had a massive takedown after that. He had to step down from the charity, but of course, Ashton is still directly tied into Thorne. We know that Ron Burkle, one of P. Diddy's sugar daddies, is also somebody who is investing into Ashton Kutcher and his firms. We also know, well, now I know, that Ashton Kutcher's Thorne is also directly related and working with Peter Thiel, Palantir. Mass surveillance is what Ashton Kutcher and Thorne are basically pushing for, to detect and understand child SA material, and that they would be able to read your conversations and chats. There would be no basically encryption when it comes to that on all apps, whether it be Facebook, Snapchat or WhatsApp. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, you know, this is fantastic. What great governance that they'll be able to detect child SA anywhere and will be able to report those people. But this is a very slippery slope where you are now giving access to Thorne and this charity to be able to control and read all your messages at any given moment of time. Do you understand what level of control, power and leverage that comes with? When we look at the conversations of Epstein, when we look at the conversations of Diddy, they got so far in their careers, Ghislaine as well, because of leverage, because of filming and having content and having pictures of powerful people around them doing horrific things that they can use as leverage. That's why when P. Diddy got arrested, they were doing raids among his house. That's why we have these Epstein files basically being water dripped to us every single year, exposing so many of these people.
But the company that he founded, the nonprofit he founded, would analyze child material, if you know what I'm talking about, of the pizza variety, for government agencies who were investigating child abuse, and they would try to identify victims for law enforcement. In 2017, Ashton testified before Congress. He spoke directly to lawmakers and became one of the most visible celebrity advocates in this entire child trafficking space. And with that came yet another different kind of power, political authority, institutional credibility. And that level of involvement also placed Ashton and his company Thorne inside another complex system, one that includes tech companies, but also now government agencies and entire governments, policy frameworks, and all of these things shape how surveillance, privacy, and digital safety are handled at scale, not to mention child material. Some investigative criticism has raised questions about how anti-exploitation technology can intersect with broader surveillance infrastructures as a whole. It also raised questions about why some people are allowed to access and look at this CSAM material while it would be an absolute go to jail, do not collect $200 crime for anybody else. And then you got to start to wonder, I mean, even if they're being allowed to see these things for a good purpose to possibly identify children, does it work 100% of the time? You're sharing with a nonprofit these images of child, I mean, I don't know. It just raises questions to me. But these critiques don't invalidate Thorne's mission. I think they do raise some questions and seriously complicates it, especially with now Ashton's previously mentioned known proximity and ties to alleged sexual predators. I know y'all didn't forget Les Moonves getting in trouble along with CBS for trying to cover up allegations. That's just, to name one. Diddy, a convicted criminal under the Mann Act, although they are appealing it, they're trying to get him to walk free. Then there's the Les Wexner, who was friendly with Jeffrey Epstein, and now he wants to have this child. Now Ashton Kutcher wants to have this child CSAM, nonprofit. It just started to raise questions. Which leads us back around to the Danny Masterson saga. The Danny Masterson criminal case was the clearest dividing line between Ashton Kutcher's rise and fall. In 2023, Danny Masterson, a widely known Scientologist, and again, co-star cast member of That 70s Show, also Ashton's longtime friend, was convicted on 2 counts of starts with an R, and sentenced to 30 years to life in prison. Now, the case had already been developing for years, but what made it uniquely explosive was the broader context when Danny was about to get sentenced. Multiple accusers had alleged that the Church of Scientology played a role in how their claims were handled, including accusations of pressure and intimidation and being discouraged from reporting. Now, as I mentioned, Danny Masterson himself was a prominent Scientologist, and as a result, the case became publicly associated not only with Danny as an individual, but with a larger system of influence, the so-called Church of Scientology. And after Danny Masterson was convicted, both Ashton and his wife, Mila, who had both been on the show with Danny, submitted character support letters to the judge requesting that the judge be lenient on this convicted artist. In these support letters, Ashton and Mila both described Danny Masterson as a positive influence and a person of integrity based on their personal experience. The public had a field day with those letters.
More backlash today for Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis after their video explaining why they wrote letters of support for convicted rapist Danny Masterson. The actors were criticized for calling their former co-star a role model, among other things. And the consensus is that video didn't help.
Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, they're under fire after writing character references for Danny Masterson, who was sentenced last week to 30 years for two women. The couple is now apologizing.
By that point, Ashton wasn't just a washed-up model or a former co-star. He had intentionally positioned himself to be the public face of an anti-exploitation organization. He spoke before Congress. He was someone who testified before Congress and built a reputation around protecting victims. So in that context, advocating leniency for an already literally convicted, two-time convicted artist, especially one whose case was completely entangled with Scientology-related allegations, this created an immediate and severe contradiction. The public backlash was instant and widespread for Lil Mr. Ashton and Mila. Media coverage, online commentary, and advocates all focused on the disconnect between Ashton's activism and his personal choices and friendships. And Mila's involvement didn't diffuse the situation, it actually made it worse because it reinforced the perception that both of them had fundamentally misjudged this moment. They had lost touch with what the people actually thought. Then, as a mitigating factor, came the apology video. They should have kept that one in the drafts.
Are aware of the pain that has been caused by the character letters that we wrote on behalf of Danny Masterson.
We support victims. We have done this historically through our work and will continue to do so in the future.
A couple months ago, Danny's family reached out to us and they asked us to write character letters to represent the person that we knew for 25 years so that the judge could take that into full consideration relative to the sentencing.
The letters were not written to question the legitimacy of the judicial system or the validity of the jury's ruling.
They were intended for the judge to read and not to undermine the testimony of the victims or reach homicize them in any way. We would never want to do that. And we're sorry if that has taken place.
Our heart goes out to every single person who's ever been a victim of sexual assault, sexual abuse.
This robotic and cold apology did not help anyone understand why they sent these letters, and this entire situation makes people regret celebrating Ashton Kutcher for the past 25 years.
But the response to the video, also very negative, largely. Many viewers found it controlled, restrained, emotionally disconnected, and logically incoherent. Instead of resolving the issue with this video, they again made it worse. Within days, Ashton stepped down as chairman of the nonprofit Thorne, with the organization publicly confirming that he resigned. I think this really was the major turning point. He wasn't like suddenly removed from Hollywood, but his credibility, particularly this persona that he had built through activism, was entirely tarnished in a way that can't be easily repaired. And once that happens, the public really begins reevaluating everything all over again from the beginning. His relationships, his judgment, his proximity to people and systems that were already under scrutiny. Which brings us to Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs. Ashton's connection to Diddy was at first completely unremarkable. At the very least, it kind of flew under the radar, like, okay, yeah, cool, Ashton's at some parties, who isn't? Diddy and Ashton were very publicly friendly. They were social, they were part of overlapping celebrity circles during the 2000s. This period of time was defined by partying, nightlife, media visibility, paparazzi, and tightly connected entertainment networks. But then, Diddy would author Ashton Kutcher's Time 100 tribute, describing Ashton as part of a kind of modern rat pack alongside figures like Jamie Foxx. At this time, it signaled status, access, relevance, popularity, but context changes meaning over time. After the legal cases and allegations surrounding Diddy started to emerge, those same connections were then again re-examined. Old interviews resurfaced, including a widely circulated moment where Ashton, when asked about Diddy's parties, paused and said there were things he just couldn't tell.
Diddy party stories, they're our favorite genre of anecdote, if you have one, yeah.
Wow. Okay, I've got a lot I can't tell. So, can't tell that one either. I mean, I'm like actually cycling through them. There was one moment, so it's not really a party story, but our relationship was really bizarre. So it started over punked because he was like, yo,
don't punk
you
me.
can't punk me. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. Everybody's on the table. He's like, not me, I'm off the table. And so that started our conversation. We became fast friends. And we used to just hang out, watch football together. Like,
at the time, prior to everything we know about Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs, it was playful. You know, that's what it read as. And again, there's no evidence, no verified evidence, I should say, linking Ashton to criminal activity in relation to Diddy. However, once again, we're just re-examining his proximity to these figures that at the time had a different status than they do today. In other words, Ashton kind of rode on the coattails of Les Wexner. And, you know, because of that, by virtue of Les Wexner, also Jeffrey Epstein. He rode on the coattails of that 70s show. Scientologist Danny Masterson, I don't know, Mila Kunis. He was associated with these people until it wasn't convenient, and then he had to deal with the fallout when people started to re-examine. By the time Jeffrey Epstein's network became a global scandal, the public had developed a new way of looking at power, not just through directly provable actions, but through connections, because these are networks. Epstein's well-documented relationship with Les Wexner, including financial control, property ties, years of close association, including rumors of an intimate romantic relationship. Anyway, I'll let Les Wexner say that one himself, or here's his interrogation deposition.
Deep into the deposition, Wexner was point-blank asked, did you personally have a sexual relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
Did you personally have a sexual relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
No.
But this all, I think, exposes how deeply embedded certain individuals were within elite systems of wealth and influence. And because Les Wexner's retail empire included Abercrombie and Fitch, the same ecosystem Ashton Kutcher emerged from decades earlier, those lines, however indirect, begin to glow in the dark. Again, to be clear, there is no credible evidence that places Ashton in Epstein's criminal network. There's no verified documentation linking him personally to Epstein, aside from those few Epstein emails, which are unclear and hard to even make out what they're even about. But in a post-Epstein media environment, that distinction doesn't always stop speculation, because we the people are no longer looking at isolated events. We're looking at patterns. In Ashton's career, spanning corporate retail systems, Hollywood power structures, venture capital networks, high-level political activism, it places Ashton repeatedly, over and over, inside the exact spaces that today are under heavy scrutiny. Again, it's all about proximity, it's all about connections, and it's impossible to completely separate Ashton Kutcher, the self-made actor from a small town in Iowa, from the power and the powerful, controversial institutions like Scientology, big tech, surveillance, Jeffrey Epstein's circle, and other elite Hollywood networks. It's kind of impossible to separate him out. The current, I would characterize it as the fall of the facade of Ashton Kutcher doesn't arise from one scandal or one event. It's kind of more about the breakdown of a narrative. For years, Ashton built his career on three things: likability, access, reinvention. He was the approachable heartthrob, the orchestrator of culture, the polished public figure and activist, the tech insider and powerful investor, and then political activist. Each version required the audience to trust him, to believe that the next shift was authentic. But over time, the trust eroded, not because of one moment or one big mistake, but more of an accumulation. death by 1,000 paper cuts. The Masterson letters became the Rupture. The Diddy associations keep the conversation going. The Epstein-era lens reframed earlier connections for re-examination, and the internet, as it always does, filled in the gaps with speculation, including fringe theories like Ashton Kutcher. So the real story isn't that Ashton Kutcher was exposed as one thing and oh, he's canceled. It's that he mastered image building at every stage of his life until he reached the point where the image alone just wasn't enough to hold everything together. And once that happens, people stop asking who you are. They start asking what they might have missed. One last final disclaimer, I am not alleging that anybody committed any crimes. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Like I said, he has never been criminally investigated for any of this. As far as I understand, he certainly hasn't, from my understanding and my knowledge, been tried. He's not, all that. He's innocent until proven guilty. I'm not saying that he did anything necessarily illegal or criminal. I'm more saying that this man who helped and played a vital front lines role to shaping, constructing, manufacturing what would be known as culture for like at least a decade, might have been full of beep the whole time. The cracks have begun to show. And I'm glad he stepped down as the leader of Thorne. That's all I really had for this one. Make sure you check out the Les Wexner videos that I have on this channel as well. He started, I might need to make a Les Wexner playlist because this I think is the 3rd or 4th video mentioning him. And drop a comment down below. If I missed anything, I definitely know I did. But this video was already, as you can tell, very long. I may re-examine some of these stories more particularly, perhaps the Britney Murphy death angle or perhaps the other girlfriend who died. But for now, that's all I really had for today. In the meantime, facts ain't defamation. Neither are opinions. Everybody is innocent until proven guilty. Love you, Mina K. Bye.